Montana Territory, 1887. The wind swept across the open plains like a lonesome spirit searching for a home. Thistle Junction sat at the edge of civilization, a small settlement where the lawless frontier met the tenuous beginnings of something civilized. For Hope Fairchild, the town's new doctor, civilization was something to be brought rather than found. At 23 years old, with long auburn hair that caught the sunlight and eyes the color of prairie grass after rain, Hope carried medicine in her bag and determination in her heart. Frontier towns need doctors more than cities do, she reminded herself as she straightened the sign outside her modest clinic. The cold October wind whipped her forest green dress around her ankles. 3 months in Thistle Junction, and she had yet to convince most of the townsfolk that a woman doctor was worth trusting. The men rode out to the cattle ranches with broken bones rather than let her set them, and the women still called for Mrs. Wilkins, the aging midwife, instead of the doctor with actual medical training. Hope believed with unwavering certainty that she could only prove herself through her work. Personal attachments would undermine the professional respect she desperately needed. Her father, a respected physician in Boston, had taught her that lesson well. The moment they see you as a woman first and a doctor second, you have lost, he had warned. So Hope had come west alone, determined to save lives and earn respect, convinced that a frontier doctor could not afford to be distracted by matters of the heart. What she wanted was clear. To establish her practice, to be respected for her medical knowledge, to save lives. What she did not realize she needed was something different entirely. 20 miles outside town, at the Triple M Ranch, Thomas Morrison stood in the doorway of his modest ranch house, watching his 5-year-old daughter Emma sleep fitfully. At 26, Thomas had the lean, strong build of a man who worked from sunrise to sunset, hands calloused from years of roping cattle and mending fences. His face was handsome despite the worry lines that had formed around his eyes since his wife Mary had died giving birth to their daughter. Pa, Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. Her small face was flushed with fever, her nightgown damp with sweat. I am right here, little one. Thomas knelt beside the bed, pressing a cool cloth to her forehead. The fear gripping his heart was almost paralyzing. 3 days of fever, and nothing he tried seemed to help. Thomas had built his life around a simple belief: the frontier was no place for weakness. After Mary died, he had sworn he would never allow himself to be vulnerable again. He would be strong for Emma, provide for her, protect her from the harshness of frontier life. He had kept everyone at a distance, even refusing help from neighboring ranchers. The Triple M was his responsibility, Emma his whole world. Needing others meant risking loss, and he had lost enough. Water, Emma's cracked lips barely formed the word. Thomas helped her drink, his rough hands gentle as they cradled her head. There you go, sweetheart. As Emma drifted back to uneasy sleep, Thomas made his decision. Pride be damned. The new lady doctor in town might be his daughter's only hope. The sky was threatening snow as Thomas carried Emma, wrapped in blankets, into his wagon. The drive to town was agonizing, every bump in the rutted trail causing Emma to whimper in pain. Hold on, Emma, he murmured. We will get you help. Hope was organizing her supplies when the clinic door burst open. A man entered carrying a small bundle wrapped in blankets, desperation etched on his face. Are you the doctor? He demanded, his voice rough with fear. Hope straightened immediately, professional instincts taking over. I am. My daughter, he said, his voice breaking. She has been burning with fever for 3 days. Nothing helps. Hope cleared her examination table. Bring her here. As Thomas laid Emma on the table, their eyes met for the first time. His were the blue of a summer sky, now clouded with worry. He looked like he had not slept in days, stubble darkening his jaw, clothes rumpled from the trail. How long has she been like this? Hope asked, her fingers already finding Emma's pulse. The fever started 3 nights ago. Thought it would pass, but she just keeps getting worse. Hope carefully examined the child, noting the rapid pulse, the inflammation in her throat, the rash beginning to appear on her chest. I believe your daughter has scarlet fever, Mr. Morrison, Thomas Morrison, he swallowed hard. Can you help her? Hope held his gaze steadily. I can, Mr. Morrison, but she needs continuous care. The fever must be controlled, and we need to prevent complications. Do whatever you must, doctor, I will pay any price. She cannot be moved in this condition, Hope explained. She needs to stay here where I can monitor her around the clock. Thomas nodded, his expression grim. Then I will stay as well. Hope wanted to object. A man sleeping in her clinic would certainly fuel town gossip, but the determination in his eyes stopped her. This was a father who would not leave his child's side. Very well, she conceded. There is a cot in the back room. We should move her there. As they settled Emma in the small room behind the clinic, Hope noticed Thomas's gentle hands, how carefully he arranged the blankets around his daughter. It contradicted his rough exterior, revealing a tenderness she had not expected. I should tell you, Thomas said quietly. Her mother died when she was born. Emma is all I have. The simple statement carried the weight of his entire world. Hope felt something shift in her chest, a crack in her professional armor. Mr. Morrison, I promise you I will do everything in my power to make sure your daughter recovers. His eyes met hers, vulnerability and gratitude intermingled. Thank you, Dr. Fairchild. That night became the first of many as Hope fought to save Emma Morrison's life. She prepared cool compresses to bring down the fever, concocted a soothing syrup for Emma's throat, and monitored her breathing with unwavering vigilance. Thomas remained a constant presence, his large frame somehow finding space in the small room, his deep voice gentle as he read stories to Emma during her waking moments. On the third night, Emma's fever spiked dangerously high. Hope worked frantically, applying cold compresses, administering medicine, whispering words of encouragement to the small, struggling body. Fight, Emma, she urged, feeling Thomas's fearful presence behind her. You must fight. The hours blurred together in a haze of medical urgency. Hope forgot her carefully maintained professional boundaries as she worked alongside Thomas, their hands occasionally brushing as they passed cloths and water. Near dawn, Emma's fever finally broke. Hope collapsed into a chair beside the bed, exhaustion overwhelming her. She will sleep peacefully now, she told Thomas, her voice hoarse from the long night. The worst has passed. Thomas stood motionless, staring at his daughter's now peaceful face. When he turned to Hope, there were tears in his eyes. I do not know how to thank you. Hope shook her head. This is why I became a doctor. Most doctors would not have stayed all night, tending personally to a ranch hand's child. You are hardly just a ranch hand, Mr. Morrison. You own the Triple M, if I am not mistaken. A faint smile touched his lips. You have done your research, doctor. Thistle Junction is a small town, word travels. Hope hesitated. They also say you have kept to yourself since your wife passed. Thomas looked back at Emma. Easier that way, safer. The simplicity of his answer resonated with Hope more than she cared to admit. Wasn't that what she was doing too? Keeping everyone at a distance, focused solely on her work. As Emma began to recover, Thomas made daily trips between the Triple M and town, tending to his ranch in the mornings and returning to the clinic by afternoon. Hope found herself watching for his arrival, listening for the sound of his wagon. 2 weeks after Emma first arrived at the clinic, Hope declared her well enough to return home. She tried to ignore the strange emptiness she felt at the thought of the Morrisons leaving. You should come check on her in a few days, Thomas suggested as he prepared the wagon, if you can spare the time. Hope nodded, surprising herself with how quickly she agreed. I could ride out tomorrow. Just to ensure there are no complications. The Triple M ranch sat in a picturesque valley, the mountains rising beyond it like sentinels. As Hope rode up the lane the next day, she was struck by the quiet beauty of the place, the well-maintained barn, the neat ranch house with smoke curling from its chimney, the distant lowing of cattle. Emma ran out to meet her, already looking stronger. Dr. Hope, did you come to see if I am still well? I am. Papa says I am strong as a horse now. Hope laughed, dismounting from her mare. Well, let me be the judge of that, young lady. Thomas appeared in the doorway, and Hope felt an unexpected flutter in her chest. He had shaved, and his clean-shaven face revealed a strong jaw and the hint of a dimple she hadn't noticed before. Dr. Fairchild, he greeted her, thank you for coming all this way. It is no trouble. I needed to make sure my patient is following doctor's orders. Over a simple lunch of stew and fresh bread, Hope found herself relaxing in a way she rarely did. Emma chattered happily about her dolls and the new calf in the barn, while Thomas watched them both with a warmth in his eyes that made Hope's cheeks flush. After examining Emma and pronouncing her fully recovered, Hope found herself reluctant to leave. Thomas seemed to sense her hesitation. Would you like to see the rest of the ranch? He offered. Emma can show you her favorite spots. The afternoon stretched pleasantly as Emma led Hope around the property, showing her the chicken coop, the vegetable garden, and the small creek that ran along the property line. Thomas walked alongside them, occasionally offering quiet explanations about the ranch operations. As the sun began to set, Thomas insisted on escorting Hope back to town. "The trail can be treacherous after dark," he explained. "Emma and I will keep you company." The ride back to Thistle Junction was filled with easy conversation. Hope found herself telling Thomas about her training in Boston, how she had fought for her place in medical school, and her decision to come west where doctors were desperately needed. "It takes courage to leave everything familiar behind," Thomas observed, "especially for a woman traveling alone." "Perhaps," Hope admitted, "but I wanted to go somewhere I was truly needed, where my work could make a difference." "It has," Thomas said softly. "At least to us." That visit became the first of many. Hope began riding out to the Triple M regularly, ostensibly to check on Emma's recovery. Soon, her visits extended beyond medical necessity, becoming social calls that brought unexpected joy to all three of them. Emma blossomed under Hope's attention, following her around the ranch house, asking endless questions about medicine in Boston and what it was like to be a doctor. Hope found herself responding with a patience and warmth she had never shown her patients in town. Thomas watched their growing bond with a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. Hope Fairchild was becoming important to Emma and to him in ways he had not anticipated. The walls he had built around his heart since Mary's death were beginning to crumble, and the sensation was both exhilarating and terrifying. Hope, too, found her carefully constructed professional barriers weakening. She caught herself thinking about Thomas at odd moments, remembering the sound of his laugh, the way his hands moved as he worked, the gentle way he spoke to Emma. "You seem different lately," remarked Mrs. Wilkins, the midwife, after witnessing Hope humming as she organized her supplies one afternoon. "Almost happy." Hope stiffened. "I am always content in my work." "Content, perhaps. But this is different." The older woman's eyes twinkled knowingly. "Does it have something to do with those regular visits to the Triple M?" Hope busied herself with her medical instruments. "I am merely ensuring a patient's full recovery." "If you say so, dear." As winter settled over the territory, the visits became more difficult but no less frequent. Thomas often came to town for supplies, bringing Emma along to see Dr. Hope. Sometimes he would arrive alone, offering to escort Hope to dinner at the town's small restaurant or bringing her fresh meat and vegetables from the ranch. "The townspeople are talking," Hope confessed one evening as they sat in her small parlor behind the clinic. Emma had fallen asleep on the sofa, and Thomas had built up the fire against the December chill. "About us?" Thomas asked, his voice carefully neutral. Hope nodded. "They think there is something improper between us." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. "And that concerns you, your reputation." "It should," Hope admitted. "A female doctor must be above reproach to be taken seriously, yet I find myself caring less than I expected." Thomas moved to sit beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from him. "What do you care about, Hope?" It was the first time he had used her given name, and it sent a shiver through her that had nothing to do with the winter cold. "I care about my work," she began, then faltered, "but I also care about Emma." And Thomas prompted, his voice low. Hope met his eyes. "And I care about you, Thomas, more than I should, perhaps." The confession hung in the air between them, changing everything and nothing all at once. Thomas reached for her hand, his fingers rough against her smooth skin. "I have fought against these feelings," he admitted. "Told myself that Emma and I were fine alone, that needing someone else only leads to pain." "I told myself the same," Hope whispered. "That I needed to be the doctor first, woman second. And no." Hope looked at their joined hands. "Now I am not so certain." Their tentative courtship bloomed through the winter months. Thomas brought Hope wildflowers he found sheltered in south-facing slopes. Hope saved special treats for Emma when the girl accompanied her father to town. The three of them formed a unit that felt increasingly natural, their lives intertwining with each passing week. By early spring, Thomas was a fixture at Hope's clinic, helping with repairs and heavy lifting. Hope became a familiar sight at the Triple M, where she started a small medicinal garden and taught Emma about the healing properties of various plants. "You would make a fine doctor someday," Hope told the girl as they planted chamomile seeds. Like you, Emma asked, her face brightening. If that is what you wish, Hope replied, smoothing the girl's hair. Thomas watched them from the porch, his heart full. He had begun to imagine a future with Hope as part of their family, though he had yet to voice these thoughts aloud. That evening, as Emma slept and they sat on the porch watching the stars, Thomas finally gathered his courage. I never thought I would find happiness again after Mary died, he began. I believed loving someone meant risking too much pain when you lost them. Hope's heart quickened, and now I realized that the greater risk would be never loving at all. Thomas turned to face her. Hope Fairchild, you have brought healing not just to my daughter but to me as well. I find myself wanting things I thought I would never want again, a partner, a complete family for Emma. Hope felt tears spring to her eyes. Thomas, I am not asking for an answer tonight, he said quickly. I know your work is important to you. I would never ask you to give it up, but perhaps someday you might consider joining your life with ours. Hope looked out at the ranch, at the home Thomas had built, and then back at his earnest face. I came west believing I had to choose between being a doctor and being a woman with a family. I never imagined I might have both. Thomas took her hand, pressing it gently to his lips. You deserve both, Hope. And Emma and I would be honored to be your family. The tentative peace they had found was shattered one stormy April night. Hope was awakened by frantic pounding on the clinic door. She opened it to find Samuel Wilson, one of the Triple M ranch hands, his horse lathered from a hard ride. Dr. Fairchild, there has been an accident at the Triple M. The boss was checking the herd during the storm. His horse spooked at lightning, threw him bad against some rocks. Hope's blood ran cold. How bad? Bad enough he sent me for you specifically, said to tell you Emma needs you too. Hope dressed with shaking hands, packed her medical bag, and rode out into the storm, fear clutching at her throat. The thought of Thomas injured, possibly dying, was unbearable. When had he become so essential to her existence? The ranch house was lit up when she arrived. Inside, she found Thomas on his bed, his face gray with pain, a makeshift bandage wrapped around his torso. You came, he whispered as she entered. Of course I came. Hope set down her bag, already assessing his injuries with professional eyes, even as her heart raced with fear. A preliminary examination revealed 3 broken ribs and a deep gash along his side that needed stitching. Hope worked methodically, cleaning the wound, applying stitches, binding his ribs tightly. Where is Emma? She asked as she worked. Mrs. Hollister from the next ranch took her for the night. Thomas winced as Hope tightened the bandage. I did not want her to see me like this. You will be fine, Hope assured him, trying to keep her voice steady, but you need rest, a lot of it. Thomas caught her hand. Hope, there is something you should know. If I had died tonight. Do not talk like that. Please listen, his grip tightened. There are men who want the Triple M, have wanted it for years. I have papers in my desk, the deed, my will. Everything goes to Emma, but she will need protection. Hope frowned. What men? What are you talking about? Before Thomas could answer, the sound of approaching horses cut through the night. Hope moved to the window and peered out into the darkness. 3 riders, she reported, coming fast. Thomas struggled to sit up, his face contorting with pain. Get my gun from the drawer, then get out the back way with those papers. I am not leaving you. Hope, please. These men have been trying to force me off this land for years. They were partners with my father. They believe half the Triple M belongs to them. Then we will face them together. Hope retrieved the gun but placed it beside him on the bed rather than taking it herself. I did not ride through a storm to save your life, only to abandon you now. The front door crashed open. Hope straightened her spine and moved to stand between Thomas and the bedroom door. When 3 men burst in, she faced them with all the authority she could muster. This is a sick room, gentlemen. My patient needs rest. The leader of the group, a heavy-set man with a scar across his cheek, sneered at her. Step aside, lady. Our business is with Morrison. Any business will have to wait. Mr. Morrison has 3 broken ribs and 20 stitches in his side. He is in no condition for visitors. She's the doctor from town, one of the other men muttered. Fairchild. The scarred man, Jackson Fuller, Thomas had called him once, looked Hope up and down with a calculating expression. Well, now this is interesting. Seems Morrison's got himself a lady friend. He took a step closer. Listen here, Dr. Morrison knows what we want. The western section of the Triple M rightfully belongs to us. His daddy promised it years ago. My father promised nothing, Thomas called from the bed, and you know it, Fuller. Hope did not budge from her position. Mr. Fuller, I suggest you leave and return when Mr. Morrison has recovered. Any discussion of property can wait. Fuller's expression darkened. I do not take orders from women. Now move aside before you get hurt. I will not, Hope held her ground, though her heart pounded with fear. As the doctor attending Mr. Morrison, I insist you leave immediately. Fuller reached for her arm. Before he could grab her, the distinctive sound of a gun being cocked stopped him cold. Thomas had managed to sit up, the revolver steady in his hand despite his injuries. Touch her, and it will be the last thing you do, Fuller. Fuller's eyes narrowed. You cannot watch her all the time, Morrison. And we are not leaving without those deeds. The deeds are not here, Hope interrupted, the lie coming easily to her lips. They are in my safety deposit box at the bank in town, Mr. Morrison asked me to secure them weeks ago. The confidence in her voice made Fuller hesitate. Thomas kept the gun trained on the men, though Hope could see the effort it cost him to remain upright. Get out, Thomas ordered. And do not come back. For a tense moment Hope thought Fuller might risk the bullet. Then he spat on the floor and gestured to his companions. This is not over, Morrison, not by a long shot. His gaze shifted to Hope. And you would do well to reconsider your associations, Doctor. Frontier disputes can get mighty dangerous for bystanders. After they left, Thomas collapsed back against the pillows, the gun falling from his trembling hand. Hope rushed to his side, her professional mask dropping away completely. Thomas, are you all right? I am sorry, he whispered, his face ashen. I never wanted to draw you into this. What was that all about? What claim do they have on your land? Thomas closed his eyes briefly. My father and Fuller were partners once. Fuller claims they had an agreement to divide the ranch, but my father dissolved the partnership before he died. Fuller has been trying to take what he believes is his share ever since. Why have you not gone to the sheriff? Sheriff Braden is Fuller's cousin. Thomas reached for her hand. Hope, you should go back to town. It is not safe for you here now. Fuller will see you as a way to get to me. Hope's chin lifted defiantly. I am not leaving, not until you are well enough to protect yourself and Emma. Hope. No, Thomas. She placed a gentle hand on his bandaged ribs. You need me now just as Emma needed me before. I will not abandon either of you. The days that followed were tense. Hope moved temporarily into the Triple M, bringing Emma back from the neighbor's ranch. She divided her time between caring for Thomas and maintaining a vigilant watch for Fuller's return. Word spread quickly about the doctor who had moved to the Triple M to nurse the injured rancher. In town, opinions were divided. Some criticized Hope for compromising her professional standing, while others romanticized the situation. It is like something from a novel, Harriet Simmons sighed dreamily in the general store. The brave doctor saving the handsome rancher's life. It is improper, countered Mrs. Graves, the minister's wife, an unmarried woman living under a widower's roof. What kind of example does that set? Hope heard these whispers when she made brief trips to town to check on her clinic and gather supplies. She found to her surprise that she cared far less about them than she once would have. Let them talk, she told Mrs. Wilkins, who had kindly watched over the clinic in her absence. There are more important things than gossip. As Thomas recovered, the bond between him, Hope, and Emma deepened. They settled into a domestic routine that felt natural, as if they had always been a family. Emma followed Hope around the house, helping with chores and begging for stories about Boston. Thomas watched them together, his heart full of a joy he had thought forever lost to him. One evening, as they sat on the porch after Emma had gone to bed, Thomas finally broached the subject that had been on his mind. Fuller will return, he said quietly, probably with more men next time. Hope nodded. She had expected as much. What will you do? What we need is proof that the partnership was properly dissolved. Thomas turned to face her. My father's lawyer was in Helena. I need to go there, find the original documents. You are still hailing, Hope protested. You cannot make such a journey yet. I must, Thomas took her hand. But first there is something I need to ask you. He drew a deep breath. Hope Fairchild, will you marry me? Hope's breath caught. Despite their growing closeness, she had not expected this moment to come so soon. Thomas, I know it seems sudden, he hurried on, but these past weeks have shown me what our life could be together. You, me, and Emma as a family. And practically speaking, if something happens to me, I want you to have legal claim to the Triple M to be Emma's guardian. Hope felt tears spring to her eyes. Is that why you are asking, for practical reasons? Thomas's hand rose to cup her cheek. No, I am asking because I love you, because I cannot imagine my life without you in it. The danger from Fuller only makes it more urgent, but it is not the reason. I love you too, Hope whispered, you and Emma both, but marriage, it will change everything, my practice. Will continue, Thomas assured her. I would never ask you to give up your calling. The ranch house is large enough to set up a treatment room if you wish, or you could keep your clinic in town and divide your time. Hope looked out at the ranch, at the land Thomas and Emma called home. She thought of the life she had imagined for herself when she came west, respected as a doctor but always separate, always alone. Then she thought of the life that had unexpectedly opened before her, a family, a home filled with love, work that still mattered but no longer defined her completely. Yes, she said finally, turning back to Thomas with a smile that lit her entire face. Yes, I will marry you, Thomas Morrison. The wedding was small but joyful, held in the Thistle Junction church with Emma serving proudly as flower girl. The town turned out in force, some from genuine goodwill, others from curiosity. Hope wore a simple cream-colored dress with lace at the collar and cuffs, her auburn hair crowned with spring wildflowers that Emma had helped gather. Mrs. Wilkins dabbed at her eyes during the ceremony. Never thought I would see the day, she whispered to Sheriff Braden beside her, our serious lady doctor, smiling like that. Even Sheriff Braden, despite his family connection to Fuller, seemed moved by the occasion. Morrison's a good man, he acknowledged, and that little girl needs a mother. The celebration afterward was held at the Triple M, the ranch house and yard decorated with lanterns and ribbons. Hope moved among the guests with a new confidence, her hand often finding Thomas's or resting gently on Emma's shoulder. You look happy, doctor, observed Reverend Graves, his earlier disapproval softened by the propriety of marriage. I am happy, Reverend, Hope replied, happier than I ever expected to be. The honeymoon was necessarily brief, a 2-day trip to a nearby hot springs while Emma stayed with neighbors. When they returned, the reality of their new life began in earnest. Hope divided her time between the ranch and her clinic in town, riding back and forth with a determination that earned her newfound respect from the community. Thomas insisted on accompanying her whenever possible, particularly after they received word that Fuller had been seen in the company of several rough-looking men at a saloon in the next county. I will not risk your safety, Thomas told her firmly. For once Hope did not argue. The threat from Fuller hung over their newfound happiness like a storm cloud, impossible to ignore. The crisis came 3 weeks after the wedding. Thomas had ridden to Helena, finally strong enough to make the journey to search for the documents that would prove his full ownership of the Triple M. Hope remained at the ranch with Emma and 2 trusted ranch hands. It was near dusk when Fuller and 5 men rode up to the ranch house. Hope saw them coming and hurried Emma upstairs. Stay in your room, sweetheart. Do not come out until I call for you, no matter what you hear. Emma's eyes were wide with fear. Is it the bad men Papa told me about? Yes, but do not worry, just stay hidden. Hope kissed her forehead. I will handle this. Downstairs, Hope collected Thomas's shotgun from above the fireplace and checked that it was loaded. She had never fired a gun in her life, but Fuller would not know that. When the pounding came at the door, she stood firm, the shotgun ready. Who is it? She called, though she already knew. You know who it is, Dr. Morrison, Fuller's voice carried through the wood. Open up, we have business to discuss. My husband is not here, Hope replied. Any business will have to wait until his return. There was a pause, then Fuller's voice again, harder now. Open this door or we will break it down. Hope steadied her grip on the shotgun. I have a loaded shotgun aimed at the door, Mr. Fuller. The first man through will not live to take another step. She heard muttered conversation outside, then Fuller again. Listen, Mrs. Morrison, we do not want trouble, we just want what is ours. Half this ranch belongs to me and my partners. Your husband knows that. My husband has gone to Helena to retrieve the legal documents proving his full ownership of the Triple M, Hope replied, silently praying the ranch hands had heard the commotion and gone for help. If you have a legitimate claim, you can present it in court. Fuller laughed an ugly sound. Courts take too long and we are tired of waiting. The sound of breaking glass came from the kitchen. They were trying to enter from the back. Hope's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. I have sent for the sheriff, she called, another desperate lie. He will be here any moment. Sheriff Braden will not interfere, Fuller responded. Family loyalty runs deep. Hope moved quietly toward the kitchen, the shotgun still aimed at the front door. She reached the kitchen just as a man was climbing through the broken window. Without hesitation, she fired the shotgun into the ceiling. The intruder dropped back in surprise. The next shot will not be a warning, Hope called, her voice remarkably calm despite her terror. Leave now, all of you. From upstairs came the sound of Emma's frightened cry. Hope's blood ran cold. Fuller had heard it too. Sounds like the little girl is all alone up there, he called. Maybe we should check on her. Hope felt a fury unlike anything she had ever experienced. If any of you come near my daughter, I will kill you without hesitation. The claim of motherhood came naturally to her lips, surprising her even as she made it. Emma was her daughter now, in all the ways that mattered. The standoff continued for what felt like hours but was likely only minutes. Then came the blessed sound of approaching horses, many of them. Hope's knees nearly buckled with relief when she heard Thomas's voice calling her name. Hope. Emma, we are inside, she called back. Fuller and his men are trying to break in. What followed was a confrontation Hope would remember for the rest of her life. Thomas arrived with not only the documents proving his ownership but also the territorial marshal, who had been in Helena when Thomas presented his case. Fuller and his men were arrested for attempted breaking and entering, threatening a woman and child, and multiple other charges the marshal seemed to take great pleasure in listing. Your cousin the sheriff will be receiving an official reprimand, the marshal informed Fuller as he was led away. Family loyalty has its limits when it interferes with the law. When they were finally alone, Thomas took Hope in his arms, holding her as if he would never let go. When I heard what happened, his voice broke, if anything had happened to you or Emma. But it did not, Hope assured him, her own arms tight around him. We are safe. All of us. That night after Emma was finally asleep, exhausted from the excitement and fear, Thomas and Hope sat together on the porch swing, the stars bright above them. You called Emma your daughter, Thomas said quietly. The ranch hands told me. Hope nodded. In that moment it felt true. She is my daughter now. Thomas kissed her gently. She has been yours since the day you saved her life. And I have been yours since then too, though it took me longer to realize it. Hope leaned her head against his shoulder. I came west believing I had to choose between my work and having a family. I thought being respected meant being alone. And no, she smiled up at him. Now I know better. I can be Dr. Hope Morrison, wife, mother, and physician. All of those things make me who I am. In the years that followed, the Triple M prospered under their joint care. Hope continued her medical practice, eventually setting up a treatment room at the ranch while maintaining her town clinic 2 days a week. Her reputation grew not despite her marriage but alongside it, the doctor who had saved the Morrison child and won the heart of the widowed rancher. Emma grew into a confident young woman with her father's determination and her adoptive mother's compassion. By her 13th birthday, she was already talking seriously about following in Hope's footsteps and becoming a doctor herself. She gets her stubbornness from you, Thomas teased Hope as they watched Emma diligently studying a medical text on the porch. And her kindness from you, Hope replied, leaning into his embrace. On the 5th anniversary of their marriage, as they sat watching the sunset from the same porch where Thomas had first proposed, Hope reflected on the journey that had brought them together. When I first came to Thistle Junction, I believed that frontier medicine was my calling and nothing else mattered, she said softly. I thought needing people was a weakness. Thomas nodded. And I believed that loving someone meant risking too much pain, that keeping to myself was the only way to protect what I had left. We were both wrong, Hope said, watching as Emma practiced lassoing in the yard, her laughter carrying on the evening breeze. Gloriously wrong, Thomas agreed, pulling her closer. You brought healing to my sick child, Hope Morrison, but you gave us so much more. You made us whole again. Hope smiled, placing her hand over his where it rested on her slightly rounded stomach, their newest blessing, due to arrive in the winter. And you gave me what I never knew I needed, she replied. A family to call my own. As the sun dipped below the mountains, casting golden light across the land they both loved, Hope knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true place in the world, not just as a doctor, but as a wife, a mother, and a woman who had discovered that the strongest medicine of all was love.